Perfect start.
Timing.
Okay, we are live. And
Yay.
hello, guys. Welcome if you're watching. As you know, it is the second episode of our Learn Like X Polyglot I mentioned in the very first one, if you haven't seen it yet. Basically, there are so many amazing polyglots out there, so many people who have learned so many languages. Nikki is one of them who I have today on the show. And yeah, Nikki, let's get it rolling. Tell us, who are you? And yeah, why can you give us advice on language learning?
Thanks for having me, Lina. I'm Nikki Prša. I am a foreign language teacher, and I've been studying languages since I was growing up. I teach German, Croatian, Polish, and English now, and I also speak Arabic and a few other languages, and I just love all things languages. So I'm always trying to find the best ways to teach others, especially people who think I can't learn a language or like I'm not a language person. You know, it's like everyone can do it no matter what age they are. And I love working with people of all ages to figure out what their learning style is. And it's all about just figuring out what you like and how you learn best, and then applying a bunch of different methods to the things that, you know, make sense to you. So a lot of times if I'm working with people who are really into sports, then it's like, okay, let's do something sports related and learn the language that way. So yeah, I run my own language company, Speak at Home Tonight, and I've been in the translation industry for over 10 years and have been teaching as a classroom teacher and online language teacher all over the world. And I've been loving my job and loving doing it. So I'm really excited because it's amazing now that we can finally meet other people who are interested in the same
Yeah,
things.
for sure. Yeah, I think it's amazing. Like, as you said, you do language teaching. I'm a language teacher myself, and I think it's incredible, like teaching online, just how many more opportunities there are. And, we can get into contact with literally anyone, anywhere in like a second. And
Yeah.
it's just incredible. But yeah, yeah, sorry, what did you want to
Oh,
say?
it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, so on that note, I think what's really interesting is, so you said you teach a lot of people, like any age, your passion is to show people, hey, no matter if you're, 5 years old, 15 or 50 years old, that you can learn a language and take whatever you're interested in. So what would be your kind of advice? Because I think that's actually a very, very common issue that people say, oh, like, I've never learned a language before, especially when they're older. What would be your kind of biggest piece of advice that you would give them to reassure them of their fear, I suppose? Or where would you start with them?
It's difficult, especially if someone older is trying to learn a language for the first time. They might have some doubts or like preconceived thoughts in their heads to telling them, you know, I can't do that. I've never been able to do it. But they kind of have to, you know, change their mindset about it and just be open and kind of either have a little bit of motivation to learn it or just be open to finding the right way for them to learn. I notice that sometimes it's difficult when people get older, your memory gets worse. So you have to find a different strategy to keep that going. So I always recommend a lot of different resources for people. And, you know, I think this is something you can totally relate to, Lina, like with you can choose what you listen to and you can choose what you consume and you can choose which language you consume it in. So if you're learning something, you know, starting with something that's in your kind of level or the, you know, the level of the language that you're at. But the biggest advice I have for anyone starting a new language is to find a language partner, somebody who's also learning the language, who's about the same level as you, because you guys are both learning the language, and that can be, you know, online in a Facebook group or someone on Instagram that's also, you know, taking part in like a language challenge or something. You can kind of help each other out if you're both learning the same language, or even in a traditional language school online or in person, you can meet someone and then help each other out and see, oh, I'm struggling with this. Because a lot of times I think it's easier for new language learners to learn from someone who's also learned the language rather than a
Yeah,
native
for
speaker.
sure, for sure. And that's a really, really good point that you make, because like I myself am a German teacher, and I can tell you honestly, I speak German better than some German people
Oh, yeah.
sometimes. Like it could also be, and I would say on that note, I teach German better than German people can. To give you the best example, so as you know, my boyfriend is German, and he was asked a question, or I asked him a question from one of my students. I think it was to do with the accusative or dative, and he had no idea. He was like, "Oh, I've heard of it, but what is it?" You know, and that's the thing. I think it's a massive misconception to go to someone who's a native speaker and think because they're a native speaker, I'm going to learn the language the best. But that native speaker can't relate to you to explain to you why something is said that way or why you use that word and don't use that word. And I think also that on that relatability factor is that, you know, we've learned the language, or
Yeah.
like just as an example, like you with Croatian as well, you've learned it from absolute zero and you've gone through all of the fears, you had the same troubles, you had the same, you know, questions, and you can answer them just like that because you know what it feels like.
Yeah. And there's always a story too. You put yourself there,
Yeah,
you're like, I made this mistake. It was super embarrassing. I'll never forget it. And then, you know, encourage the learner to make the mistakes too and just try. It's so, so true. It's so helpful. You know, it's like I was the learner and I'm the teacher. I got this. I know how to help you.
exactly,
It's so
exactly.
rewarding.
Yeah. So in terms of languages, so I think you speak a very interesting mix of languages. So you have Croatian, you have Polish, you have German, and you have Arabic. So what is kind of your, like, behind every language, as you said, there's a story. So what's
Oh,
your story behind wanting to learn? Yeah. And I mean, Croatian, I personally know, but for those of you watching,
Oh yes, for Croatian, Croatian is the language. Okay, so I have a bunch of language stories, and I'm always learning more, obviously, because that's what we do, and it's fun to put yourself back into the student's seat, especially if you've been a teacher or if you've spoken certain languages for a while. I'm Polish American, so I grew up speaking Polish at home with my family and speaking English at school in the United States.
Mhm.
So I, you know, grew up speaking two languages and was really, really interested in learning more. When I realized I was like, oh, I'm kind of good at this. Like I should just figure out how to do it. And this was, you know, I'm a little older than you, so this was a lot of pre-internet time. So I was using a lot of library resources and like Spanish on cassette tapes and whatever, just to like
Literally,
start.
I did the same thing. Like,
Yeah, why
I
not?
started learning when I was like 7, and I would sit in a library and, like, yeah, the computers, you would have to like pay money to use the internet. And I would just grab, you know, like Michelle Thomas, I think it was, or whatever. And I would take the books, I would take cassettes, and phrase books were my absolute favorite, and just sit
Yeah.
there hidden.
I know, it's so funny, and you forget that you did things. And recently I found some notebooks from middle school and I was like,
Mm.
wow, I was such a language nerd, and I just didn't even realize the possibilities that, you know, can open up to your career by being a language person. You know, a lot of people think you can only be a teacher or only be a translator or
Yeah.
something. There are so many options. And I studied Arabic in college. I got really interested in learning something totally different. I was an exchange student in high school. I went to Germany for a year with Congress Bundestag and lived in Bayern. And that's where my host family, who I love so much, they'll tell you that I learned Bayerisch very quickly. It's like
Yeah.
kind of, they were like, this is such an anomaly. How is this girl coming? Especially because people thought I was like from the US, so I'm very American, but I'm very
Uh,
Polish in heart too. So, you know, I was like, "Ooh, it's a little different. It's a little easier when you know, your brain is already used to thinking in multiple languages." So it was like, Bayerisch, this is not so difficult. It's kind of like, you know, just, I don't know. I thought it was great. So I studied German and Arabic at university then. And I realized the immersion experience worked so well the first time with German that in Philly, I was trying my hardest. I started the Arabic club at my university in Philadelphia and, you know, did everything I could to learn the language from the city. But I just felt like I really need to travel and get somewhere, no matter what it takes, no matter how much I have to sacrifice to do it. And I went to Egypt. I studied abroad in Cairo during university, and I went to an intensive Arabic language program where we studied like 8 hours a day, and then had homework to go into the city and talk to people. And it was an amazing experience. And it really, there's just, the Arabic language is so beautiful. It's such an interesting language, and the people are just the most generous and wonderful in the world. So it's really fun to challenge yourself, especially when, you think this is a different alphabet. It's like totally different. Everything is different, but why not? And of course, I'm interested in lots of other languages with different alphabets.
Exactly. Yeah. I think, yeah, to add on to that, I want to just say, like, I think two things actually that you brought up. And I think it's really, really important for all of you guys watching to remember this. So, I remember when I was younger and I would watch these polyglots as well. We all started somewhere, and you would see these people who can speak so many languages. And you think, first of all, like, they're born with this other brain. I think people would always think that I have talent, or that, I was just like another type of human being. I wasn't like them. And I think on that note, it's important to note that when, like, you don't have to look at it like language learning as this very dry thing. It comes all from desire. When people ask, how come you learn so many languages? It's not that our brains are wired differently. It's just that, like, as you said, how, I think that's really interesting. Nikki met her boyfriend, or well, now her husband, and that spiked your interest to learn Croatian. You wanted to learn something different, so you learned Arabic. And it can literally be sparked through anything. And I think, like, when, like, I learned a little bit of Arabic just because I ended up working at a restaurant with Lebanese people, and you would just be surrounded by it, and that sparks your interest, because language is just a means to communicating with the rest of the world, and it's amazing. And I think travel is the icing on the cake. It's like I learned German, or to speak German, before I had ever even been to Germany, and then I went to Germany, and it sped up my, like, yeah, the whole process even more. And it was just like, it was like the best thing, just as you said, you learned Arabic and you went to Cairo, and you were like, yes, like, this is awesome. This is awesome. But yeah, so what would you say to anyone, because we all lose motivation, like, it's a given. It doesn't matter if you're learning your second language, your 10th language, or whatever. We all lose motivation. Well, how do you go about it when you feel like you feel a bit overwhelmed with, like, all the languages or whatever? What's something that keeps you motivated?
It's so true. The motivation thing, you have to just listen to yourself. If you need a break, take a break, but bring it back to being fun. Don't make it like so stressful or so competitive with yourself that you have to be at a certain place, because you've already made progress. If you started, you've already made progress,
Exactly.
And a lot
if
of
you've
people,
learned one word, you're doing better than yesterday.
And people a lot of times don't realize that they already know a lot of things in other languages. There's borrowed words in every language that people, can then use in another language. I know that I used to be really kind of hard on myself, and I would say I can't listen to any music in English until I can translate it to German. If I can't do that, so I like made up, I translated the lyrics to Womanizer by Britney Spears into Frauenizer, and made Cake by the Ocean, Kolac Pored,
Yeah.
make it like a Croatian song, because I'm like, okay, I need to practice my Croatian, but I like to keep it fun, and I know music really helps me. And even doing something nerdy like listening to a song in Polish, I grew up speaking Polish, but spelling is still really difficult for me, because I'm definitely was used to speaking it more and listening to it rather than writing. And I rely on talk to text sometimes to make sure my spelling is right. So recently I was on a flight and I listened to this new Polish rap song that I'm super into. And I wrote down the lyrics, listened to it. And I was like practicing my spelling. And I'm like, is this right? Is this a ch, or should this be a CZ? Like, what am I, CI maybe? Because all the, Polish, like, I feel like Croatian is easier Polish sometimes.
Well, that's like kind of similar. I think the Slavic languages have, like, even if they're not in it, like, spelled, or have the same spelling, they're still quite similar with words. Like, I know, I have a Bosnian student, and we'll sometimes, he won't be able to say a word in English or German. He'll go to Bosnian, and I'll be like, the Russian word is similar to that word. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Exactly. And see, that's really, really cool and important at the same time. Like, I think one of the worst things or misconceptions that's out there is, people are always like, which method should I use? Which, like, should I get this book? Should I use a textbook? And they get like, it's like this bubble their head is so full of all these like pieces of advice that they don't even know like where to start. And I think that's the thing. You've got to start with whatever makes you happy and with whatever you're interested in. As you said, if you're interested in music, if you like rap, translate it. Or like there is no right way to go about it. And I remember, like, I think one of the other things, and you can comment on this as well, is at school, we're often just given like one textbook to follow, a dictionary, because that's what you're supposed to do. And yeah, so many people lose interest. Like I remember in my German class, I started in year 10 and we had like 20 students or more. By the end, we had 4 or so, maybe 5. And it was because, I think their interest just wasn't sparked. They didn't see the bigger picture. Yeah. And I think, yeah, that's it. Like, you might start with music, you might then go on to a textbook, you might start reading in the language, What are some other things that you could do? Like, what tips do you give your students?
So many things. To speak to your point, I just really think about that motivation and what we were talking about with being able to communicate to people. I think that's probably the biggest motivation with like my husband is from Croatia, and I really learned Croatian because I wanted to talk to my mother-in-law. She doesn't speak English. She only speaks Croatian, and we were like hugging all the time and just like hugging. The first like time I met her was just like, we can't do anything but like,
yeah, that's so cute.
Tomislav, oh, Tomislav je dobar, like he's good, like, I know how to say hello, how are you? So that having people as motivation and making new friends and, it's so possible now to do things online. So I really recommend people use social media to be social. I've made so many friends on Instagram and Facebook that we really connect, especially with like the love of a language or to ask each other questions. Like, I'm always learning French and Spanish. Those are 2 languages that I want to learn. So I love being able to be like, why is it this and not this? But I really recommend people go back to certain resources that they might have tried before. If you're like a beginner or intermediate, go back to the Memrise app. A lot of people used to use it, stopped or whatever, but I love it. I think it's so helpful. There's so many different courses on there. So if one's not working, find another one that you might like and try out different sources online. Try out different language teachers. You want to find someone who speaks to you. It doesn't have to, it's not awkward, it's not a right fit, you can, that's what, I like knowing people all over the world so I can recommend students to different teachers because I know, like a lot of students that I teach are women, especially older women or women our age. They, it's fun because I have a lot of resources that I can recommend, especially for people who like, Poland's Next Top Model. And I'm like, oh, I have all the links for you to watch this from any country because I like it too. And it's a great way to practice the formal and informal. Like reality shows like that, people don't realize that's a great option for learning real conversational language.
Exactly. I think also like with my students, the thing is language learning doesn't have to be tedious. There are some things that you're not going to like as much as others, but I think the best kind of classroom, whether it be online or at school or a university, whatever, and it's what I do with my students, is always related to something that they enjoy and just like make it fun. Like, I have this student who's like massively into like sport and weightlifting and stuff, and we both like the gym. So I literally just like, I'll bring up stuff from like powerlifting stuff, or like we had an Excel, like I just made up this thing with Dwayne Johnson, and you forget that it's even a language lesson. And I think those are the types of, resources, I suppose, or learning environments that you need, where you can relate it straight back to you, and you're like, oh, and even when you learn how to say like hello, how are you in a language, you already feel like you're a native. You're like, oh, I can pronounce this.
I know, and just use it as soon as you learn it. Try to use it as soon as possible in any way, whether you record yourself saying it, because later on you can see, oh, that was my pronunciation then, look at me now. Or, you meet someone out, especially if you live in a city, you know, there's so many languages all around you. And if you start to listen, you're like, oh, wow, I can pick something up and, you know, surprise someone. And hey, I know something in your language.
Yeah, you go bit by bit, bit by bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, on that note, I think as well, so you like as you said, it's good to try out a couple of resources, or like just try out something until it works. I think the kind of downside to that is sometimes people just get frustrated if it takes forever, or they feel like they're not learning anything. Do you think that, let's say, you know, a lot of people's goal is I want to speak this language, which generally means I want to become almost like a native speaker. I want to become fluent in this language is a better word. And so what would you say? Do you think it's better to learn kind of with a plan? So by that I mean that you have, you know, let's say a 1 year plan. You're like, okay, in 1 year I want to reach this level. I need this and this, and then have sort of like more so like goals. Or do you think like I think people rely too much on, say, like using italki or using, you know, Memrise or Duolingo, and they think that alone with that I'm gonna get to fluency.
Yeah.
So would you say to that? So do you think people should have kind of a plan?
I think people should. The best way I see right now in 2018 to learn a language is to have a language teacher that you work with one-on-one. That's the biggest way I think someone can make progress. That way, you as the student, you don't have to worry about the plan as much.
Yeah,
Your teacher,
exactly. It makes your life easier. Guys,
so much, you already know what you're doing, and you know what the student needs, and you know when you're teaching and someone goes off on a tangent, they're so confused, they're making themselves even more confused by going like way forward or trying to figure out, well, how would I say this? And it's like you got to go step by step, use what you know, and then, you know, remember, especially with like use phrases in conversation, and then, you know, so it's like I see so much progress. Today I realized that it's a 1 year anniversary of working with one of my students, and she has come so far. I am so proud of her. I can't believe it, and I'm so excited. I'm going to see her later today, and it's amazing. And I love to remind her of like, look, this is where you were, and now you're here. Like, this is amazing. It's incredible.
Exactly. No, exactly. Just before this live chat, actually, I finished off a whole lesson. That's why we were a little bit late. But exactly. And my students, 3 of them, they started learning German like, I think it was 5 months ago, so 4 months ago. And in 3 months, they got up to an A2 level. And one of his wives, actually, she had done an A1 course, and she hadn't even learned the stuff that he had learned. And yeah, and he was just like, wow, like, you know, having that one-on-one, because you can go more in depth into those students' needs and what they really need to learn, rather than just having like a bland odd course that everybody follows, you know.
Absolutely.
And I think, like, guys, like I always say this to my students or to anyone who wants to learn a language, like the way that I teach, I wish someone had given me like that plan, or given me that, because it's sometimes even the little things, as you said, when you learn like just the point of, okay, I should translate this more with its meaning, or have it as a phrase rather than word for word. And some people don't realize that, like they don't know that maybe they've never learned a language, or it's just those simple things that can save you so much time and save you time from making mistakes that others have already made that you don't need to make.
Yes, totally, totally. Sometimes my husband, he's so sweet. He's like, I wish you were my language teacher. Like, you know, I wish I had a language teacher like you. And sometimes I'm like, ooh, I really want to find a language teacher who does things like I do.
Nikki, we're taking over the world. I'm telling you guys. Exactly.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's literally the most fun ever. And every single time after a lesson, it's like, that was amazing.
Yeah. It just puts a smile on your face, because you're like, oh, I helped this person. This person is going places. And yeah, you were part of that. Exactly. Okay,
especially
so
when you get to plan a trip somewhere. That's the best. And actually like use the language. Connect
exactly.
It's amazing.
And then they come back and they're like, oh my God, that was incredible.
Yeah. And like, I understood this.
Exactly. And those are the best stories. Those are the best stories, because you can put yourself in their shoes and you're like, I remember that moment for me. Yes. So that was awesome. Yeah. But exactly. Do you have any other things that you want to add before we get to our final part?
I'm so glad that we got to do this, and I'm very excited to see what the final part is.
So also, we've got a couple of chat things. I think someone asked me in Latvian, do I have Instagram? Oh, and to teach you how to say like hi, how are you in Latvian? Ciao, kā tev iet?
Ciao, kā tev iet?
Love it. Perfect, perfect. So yeah, and if you want to say I'm good, you say labi or man iet labi.
Say it again.
Labi.
Labi?
Labi. Yeah,
Labi.
labi, just an I.
Labi.
Yeah. Oh, you're Latvian already. You've got the hair, so
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Eastern Europeans, you know.
That's it. Oh yeah, actually I made a video recently, if you saw, about Eastern Europeans. Should have gotten you on there. Should have gotten you on there. Next time.
Thank you so much.
When I learn Polish or Croatian, I'll come to you and we'll do a little snap. Yeah, really. Okay, so then we have a question. Do I have Instagram? Yeah, I'll link my Instagram and Nikki's Instagram below. Then there's a question. This is interesting. It's from Julia Tonero. And she says, do you find yourself confident studying languages of different language groups? I think I'm stuck in the Slavic language group. Do you have some advice? This is a good question. What do you have to say?
It's a very humbling experience to switch to a totally different language. It's very difficult. It takes a different, kind of part of your brain to get used to it, but kind of, treat it like you were at the beginning with another language and write everything down, hear it, say it, just repeat all of the things to get there. It's hard, but if you want to do it, you can totally do it.
Exactly. I think just whatever it is, it doesn't even matter if we're even talking about languages, whatever it is, and it's something new, just go for it. I think same thing, we'll make this a bit short, but kind of a thing, something that many people probably don't know. So when I started learning Russian, or before I started learning Russian, I was fluent in 5 languages, and I'd focus on all of these 5 languages. And apart from 2 of them, or actually 3 of them, like half were Romance languages and the other half were like Germanic, and then we had Latvian. And I was like actually scared to start a new language because it was kind of my ego a little bit, if I'm honest, because I was like, I don't know what it's like to be a beginner anymore, and I don't want to, kind of stuff up in a way. And then I just decided, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to start learning. I started like revisiting my Japanese, my Russian, and Italian. And it was actually, as you said, such a humbling experience because you realize it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how old I am. It doesn't matter who I am or how many languages I've learned. At some point, we're always beginners. It doesn't matter who you are. And I think that's the best thing that, you take on a new challenge when you start learning a new language in a new language group. So, yeah. That's it. And so the next question, how did you choose what languages to learn? So I think you didn't even actually mention all of the ones you speak. So what ones do you speak and how did you choose how to learn them?
Yes, so I speak English and Polish, and that's because of my family and how I grew up in the US to my parents who are from Poland. And I actually didn't really like speaking Polish when I was little, and I avoided it for a long time. And when I finally went to Poland to visit my grandparents and my family there, I could not communicate with the other kids, and it was so frustrating. They didn't speak English, and I could only talk to my sister, and I was like, forget it. When I get back to the US, I'm only speaking in Polish to my family, and it worked. And then, I actually learned the language so that I could hang out with my cousins and actually have fun with everyone. So it definitely takes work, though. It is not easy. It is embarrassing. People will make fun of you because you sound cute when you make mistakes. And, that's fine. That's totally happened.
And you'll make that mistake like 50 times until you don't make it anymore. And it happens.
Totally. So I'm talking about languages that I'm fluent in, and German is the next language. My parents, when they left Poland as political refugees, they moved to Berlin in the early 80s. So I've always had kind of a fascination with German culture and, German history and everything. So I really got interested, hearing stories about what Berlin was like. And I started studying German in school. And I chose it because of kind of that history. I had in the US, the language options in schools are not great. So, you know, we kind of get like a few weeks of Spanish, a few weeks of German. Here you go, decide which one you
Really?
want. Yeah,
Okay, that's
especially
interesting.
in my day. So it depends on your school, but that was the option. So I, you know, have like had this basic Spanish understanding, and I was like, oh wow, the German is like just makes sense. It's kind of like English.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I could see myself traveling to Germany more because it's closer to Poland. So kind of like that's what kind of started it. And then I did not have a lot of money growing up. So I looked for a scholarship to try to travel, and that's how I got to go to Germany on a scholarship. So that's like how that kind of started. And once I did that and I lived in Europe, I was like, wow, I love this. I'm obsessed. What else can I learn? So I just, you know, was ready to learn everything and for fun study, you know, I've dabbled in many, many languages. You know, I'm pretty much conversational in most languages because it's fun, and why not? If you want to, or if you meet someone interesting and you want to learn something like in Latvian, then, you know, write it down so you can remember it later and use it again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
And
even
then,
yeah,
yeah,
any phrase you know for the rest of your life.
exactly. You
There
have
you
that. And if you meet someone, you're like, hey, I know this. But yeah, so I studied Arabic then in college. I studied modern standard Arabic, Fusha, and then Egyptian colloquial Arabic. And then I met my husband while like in between the German and Arabic years. I met my future husband, who's the Croatian sensation. And yeah, we fell in love at first sight and dated long distance for a long time. And I started learning Croatian through the like one phrase book that existed, which was Serbo-Croatian. So I would say things that were pretty much in Serbian, and everyone would be like, no, we don't say that in Croatia. But that was super interesting because I got to learn Bosnian, Serbian, and Croatian through my family over there and travels in the Balkans. And yeah, so now I fluently speak a bunch of these Balkan languages and Arabic too. So it's fun.
That's cool. That's cool. Okay, so to finish off, also funny question. I think someone just joined into the live stream like randomly. Huch, was geht denn hier ab? Wir machen einen
Oh,
Livestream hier, also über Sprachen lernen mit Nikki. Also Reichsadler Germania, whatever. Da ist deine Antwort. There's your answer. But yeah, so Arabic. I'm actually flying to Qatar tomorrow.
oh my
And
gosh.
my first sort of visit to a Middle Eastern or Arabic speaking country. So I need to know a little bit of Arabic. I know that you say like I think it's salam alaikum.
It's
Sorry about my
beautiful.
pronunciation. So it's like hello.
Beautiful.
What else can you teach me? I know the
Yes.
word for carrot. I think it's jazilan or so. Don't ask
Beautiful.
me why. What
How about
do I need to know?
so when someone says or you say assalamu alaikum, you can
Mm-hmm.
reply um ma alaikum assalam. It's like
Okay.
ma in the beginning. It's kind of
Ma.
the letter is called an ain. So it's like
Uh,
when you should totally study Arabic. You'll love it. You
I
look
would
in the
love.
yeah,
The
you're
writing
like
is hard, but yeah, I think I
it's
love the
it's
sound of it.
really yeah, it's really fun. And it's fun to use different muscles. So you kind of say ah ma. That's with.
Ah, okay. Ah,
Yeah,
ah.
it's kind of a weird thing. There's lots of videos on YouTube, but it's like with peaceful greetings. Ma alaikum
Mm.
assalam.
Ma alaikum, ma salam.
Yeah, yeah. We can write
Assalam.
this down too.
Yeah, I think I need
But
to write it down.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes with yeah, and with Arabic, when you're learning it, a lot of teachers will tell you not to transliterate so that you
Mm.
learn how to actually write it and you practice learning the letters, which I totally agree. But something simpler to say hello or welcome, you'll hear ehlan wa sehlan.
Ah, I've heard this one, yeah. Okay. Ehlan wa sehlan.
Beautiful. Ehlan wa sehlan.
Ehlan wa sehlan.
Yes.
Ooh, I'm
Yeah.
excited. See
So, do
this,
you know
you learn
thank
a
you?
phrase and you feel
You're
wonderful.
gonna know it.
Shukran.
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 Yeah,
Yeah.
shukran. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Jayid. Yeah,
There we go.
yeah, and
And
you probably maybe people will say this to you, but Latifa means pretty.
Latifa. I've heard of that. Yeah, Latifa. And I know
Yeah,
like Habibi, when you say like
of
Habub,
course.
Habibi, and
Yes,
like people that say like Wahyat Allah is like I
yes.
swear to God. So
Yeah,
you pick up those
I'm
again,
sure,
again.
a lot of phrases that you'll hear often. Alhamdulillah,
Alhamdulillah.
alhamdulillah. Yeah,
Ah,
that's like it's written in like a lot of beautiful artwork. Alhamdulillah and inshallah, God willing.
yeah, inshallah. Yeah.
Yeah, you might hear.
Wonderful. Well, you guys, you'll hear about my trip to Qatar. I'll be putting up a vlog as well. I'm so excited. Like, oh, as I said, I've never been to, like, except for the airport, of course. I've never
Yeah,
actually gone out and seen, like, and yeah, a Middle Eastern country. So I am so excited for
you're gonna
tomorrow.
learn so much.
Exactly. Who knows? You'll see the next live video we'll do. You'll see me like fluent
Yes.
Arabic.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. It's
بالعربي حبيبي.
yeah.
Yes.
Arab
Awesome.
version. Exactly. But yeah, so I think we'll finish up there. It's been a wonderful, wonderful chat with you, Nikki. I'm so excited to have you on here to have done this video with
So
you.
much. I'm so glad we finally got to do this. This is amazing. I love this series and I can't wait to see more episodes.
Yes, so yeah, guys, that's it for now. If you have any questions, feel free to message us, leave a comment if you enjoyed this. If you are new to my channel, subscribe, of course. If you haven't checked out Nikki's channel or her Facebook site, I'll link everything below as always. And otherwise, yeah, Nikki, have a wonderful morning. I'm gonna go to sleep in a couple of hours. So
I'll see you soon, Lina.
I'll see you
Thank you.
soon. See
Bye.
you. See you
Bye,
guys.
everybody. Thanks for watching.
Bye.